You know that feeling when you spend um, weeks or maybe even months organizing something perfectly?
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Right. Like you build this flawless system. For you listening, maybe it's a meticulously categorized shared drive for your team.
Or, a super rigorous process for handling customer intake.
Exactly. You roll it out, you do the presentation, you're just so proud of the structure.
And you just wait for the efficiency to roll in.
But then you log in a week later, and absolutely nobody is using it the way you designed it,
Yep, they're saving files directly to their desktops.
or bypassing your beautiful intake forms to just email people directly. The behavior hasn't changed one bit.
It is honestly maddening.
It really is. It feels like a personal betrayal sometimes.
Oh, totally.
But, that universal frustration is actually the jumping off point for our deep dive today. We are looking at a brilliant piece of writing by Tobias Reidenhag.
Yeah, he's the head of design at Intunio, which is a UX design and development studio in Sweden.
Right. And the article is called When a Design System Starts Delivering Real Impact. But what we're really doing today is exploring the hidden psychology of organizational decision-making.
Which is such a massive topic.
It is. We're going to look way beyond the actual technology of design systems. We want to understand the exact pivotal moment when a tool stops being just a fancy repository and actually transforms how an entire company operates.
Because there is a massive and often totally overlooked chasm between having a tool and having a system.
Oh, for sure.
Companies spend millions building the tool, but crossing that chasm requires an incredible shift in human behavior. And most organizations, frankly, just don't know how to navigate that.
Okay, let's unpack this, because Reidenhag's core thesis hits right at that misconception.
It really does.
He says the biggest trap any company falls into is believing that a design system is finished just because the component library is built.
Right. They think, okay, we define the design tokens.
And real quick, if you aren't familiar with the jargon, design tokens are basically the raw DNA of a brand's look.
Like the exact hex code for the company's specific shade of blue.
Exactly. Or the exact pixel size for a heading font. So they define the tokens, they build the buttons, the documentation is beautifully published on some internal wiki, and they dust off their hands.
Mission accomplished. Right?
Exactly. The investment is made. But according to the source, that is rarely where the real impact begins.
Actually, it's usually just the beginning of a very chaotic, highly frustrating phase. Reidenhag calls this initial period local optimization.
Local optimization.
Yeah. And to really grasp why this phase is so dangerous, we have to look at the psychology of the teams on the ground.
Right.
Before a universal system is introduced, every individual product team or squad is entirely focused on solving its own specific problems.
Which, makes total sense. They have their own sprint deadlines.
Exactly.
If I'm a developer, I'm not thinking about the overarching corporate aesthetic. I'm thinking about the fact that my product manager needs this new checkout page live by Friday.
Exactly that. It is completely rational behavior. Their needs are concrete, and their immediate context is very clear.
Right.
So when management suddenly drops this shiny new universal design system into their laps, the teams don't magically adopt a holistic, company-wide mindset.
They just take this new shared library and use it to keep doing what they've always done.
Precisely.
Like they grab a button component from the new library, but then they still spend a 45-minute meeting debating how much padding, like how much empty breathing room should go around that button on their specific page.
Oh, yeah. Or they argue over the error state, meaning what color and text should pop up when a user types a password wrong.
Right, they handle all these exceptions locally. But wait, I have to ask, is that really so bad?
Whoa.
Isn't that just teams being agile and adapting to their specific users? Because to me, it's like buying a state-of-the-art toolbox for a construction crew, but every worker still insists on using their own lucky hammer.
A lucky hammer, yeah.
Right, because it's what fits their grip. Sure, it's not perfectly uniform, but the house still gets built.
That's a fair point, but what's fascinating here is where that lucky hammer dynamic completely breaks down.
Okay, tell me.
If you're building one small house, maybe you get away with it. But imagine that construction crew is building a 100-story skyscraper.
Oh, wow.
Or a whole city grid. Reidenhag points out that as an organization scales and more teams rely on the system, a subtle but deeply destructive dynamic appears.
What happens?
Those local decisions, those tiny variations in how the lucky hammers are swung, begin to accumulate.
So they snowball into something unmanageable.
Worse than snowball, they solidify into permanent structural flaws.
Ouch.
Yeah. One team alters the spacing slightly because it looks better for their specific widget. Another team overrides a behavioral pattern because their user flow is just a little unique.
And at low complexity, when the company is small, nobody really notices.
Exactly. But as the product suite grows, these small, locally optimized differences turn into massive technical debt.
Right.
The user experience becomes totally fragmented. A customer clicks a drop-down menu on the marketing page, and it behaves completely differently than the drop-down menu on the billing page.
That is so frustrating as a user.
It really is. And meanwhile, the code base is getting bloated with hundreds of one-off exceptions. Management eventually realizes they have a library of expensive parts, but they absolutely do not have a functional system.
Because the decision-making culture hasn't changed at all.
Exactly.
The workers have the new toolbox, but they are still deciding how to frame the house room by room, entirely on the fly.
That is the crux of the issue. To escape the trap of local optimization, teams have to fundamentally change where decisions are made.
Where they are made.
Yeah. Reidenhag notes that the real shift happens when foundational decisions are no longer debated inside individual projects.
And by foundational decisions, the source is talking about things like spacing rules, interaction principles, and basic accessibility assumptions.
Exactly.
For example, deciding once and for all if your modals, those pop-up windows that dim the background and force you to click OK or cancel.
Right, everyone loves those.
Deciding if those should have a dark transparent overlay or a light one.
Yes, the elements that should be universal across the entire ecosystem.
Right.
When an organization matures, it accepts that these specific choices belong at a higher systemic level. They have to be resolved before a project even begins.
But not because discussion is forbidden by some, authoritarian design police, right?
No, not at all. It's because everyone collectively agrees that debating the padding on a drop-down menu for the 100th time is a massive waste of human energy.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That is the moment a design system stops being a passive library and starts functioning as an active platform.
Here's where it gets really interesting. And I want to push back on this on behalf of anyone listening who works in a creative field.
Sure, go for it.
Doesn't taking away these decisions stifle creativity? I mean, if you standardize everything, the spacing, the behavior, the interactions, aren't you just building an assembly line? You're telling brilliant, highly paid designers and engineers, stop thinking, just use the template.
It is the most common fear when rolling these systems out, absolutely. But Reidenhag argues the reality is the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah, he offers a brilliant philosophical counter to this fear. He says, platforms reduce variation at one level to enable freedom at another.
I hear that. And, reducing variation to enable freedom sounds great on a bumper sticker.
Right.
But if I'm a senior engineer who takes pride in crafting unique, elegant interfaces, doesn't this still feel like a demotion? Don't I just become a copy-paste drone?
Not if you look at what you're actually being freed up to do.
Okay.
It's the paradox of constraint.
Yeah.
By standardizing the foundation, you aren't shutting off a creative professional's brain. You are actually giving them their brain back.
Giving them their brain back. I like that.
You are providing the cognitive space to focus on much more complex, context-specific problems. Think about it. Does a senior engineer really want to spend 3 hours writing custom logic for a simple calendar date picker that's been built a million times before?
Definitely not.
No. If the platform handles the date picker, that engineer can spend their energy optimizing the actual search algorithm or, inventing a totally new feature that drives real business value.
Okay, when you frame it around what they get to build instead, that shifts the perspective entirely.
It really does.
And the source makes a really crucial point here that flips how most people view these systems. Reidenhag writes that the true impact of a design system is organizational, not visual. Visual consistency is just a byproduct.
And that distinction is the turning point for a company's culture.
Not so.
Well, when visual consistency is your only goal, the system team acts like a regulatory body. They're just policing people.
Which nobody likes.
Exactly. But when organizational impact is the goal, you act like an infrastructure team, and you start seeing clear signs of this shift in the wild.
Like what kind of signs?
New projects kick off without anyone having to redefine the fundamental structure. System work suddenly sits right alongside product features on the executive roadmap.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and design and engineering actually plan together, rather than engineering just reacting defensively to whatever design throws over the wall.
Because they share the exact same reality.
Exactly.
Which leads to the psychological effects of all this.
Yeah.
Because once that shift happens and the platform takes over those repetitive foundational decisions, something really profound happens to the human beings actually doing the work.
Oh, definitely.
The source calls it cognitive relief.
Cognitive relief. It's such a powerful concept, and it is easily the most underestimated effect of a mature system.
Yeah.
When you don't have to renegotiate reality every single morning, your mental overhead plummets.
Think about all those exhausting, soul-crushing meetings, the endless back-and-forth Slack threads.
Oh, the Slack threads.
Hey, what hex code are we using for primary buttons this quarter? Or wait, did we decide that error messages go above the text box or below it?
Right. All of that ambient friction just disappears. Discussions become fewer, but the discussions you do have become incredibly focused on high-value problems.
That sounds amazing.
It is. Onboarding a new hire goes from taking weeks to taking days because there is a single clear reference frame they can rely on.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about onboarding.
Yeah, it's huge. And perhaps most importantly, the historical, sometimes toxic friction between design and engineering drops significantly.
Because they aren't fighting over pixel alignments anymore.
Yeah,
The structural foundation is already settled law.
exactly.
And the source points out this translates directly to the bottom line. You start seeing shorter startup times for new initiatives.
Yep.
You see way less duplicate implementation, meaning you aren't paying two entirely different engineering squads to essentially build the exact same user profile layout twice.
Which happens way more than people think.
Oh, I bet. But there's another layer to this cognitive relief, and it has to do with how the organization handles change.
Yes, the transition from organic change to intentional change. In a messy, immature system, change is purely organic. It's like weeds growing in an untended garden.
Okay.
Someone creates a quick local solution to hit a deadline, it gets merged into the main code, and suddenly it's a permanent variant that has absolutely no logical place in the broader ecosystem.
Right, it's just sitting there, confusing everyone who stumbles across it 6 months later.
But in a mature system, change is intentional. Teams understand the difference between a product-specific tweak and a systemic update.
Got it.
If a core component actually needs to be updated to better serve the user, it's planned. The consequences are mapped out and understood across all products before it's rolled out. It's highly visible. It's controlled.
And that control creates the most valuable currency in any company, which is trust.
Trust, absolutely.
This reminds me of city plumbing. Like if you live in a town where the municipal water pressure is totally unpredictable or the pipes constantly burst without warning, you don't trust the infrastructure.
No, you definitely don't.
So what do? You start hoarding bottled water in your basement. You create your own local backup system because you assume the city's going to fail you.
That translates perfectly to the software world.
Really?
Yeah. If developers don't trust that a design system is stable, what do? They detach components from the main library, they copy the code and paste it locally into their own files.
Right. They hoard the components just in case the central system pushes an update that breaks their specific page.
Exactly.
They build parallel, hidden solutions driven entirely by fear. But once you trust the city's plumbing, once you know the infrastructure is rock solid and updates are intentional, you stop hoarding bottles. You just turn on the tap.
If we connect this plumbing analogy to the bigger picture, you can actually see how this trust physically changes a company's energy expenditure.
Okay, how so?
Well, an organization without trust spends a massive amount of its daily energy just stabilizing.
Like putting out fires.
Exactly. They are constantly fixing bugs created by mismatched components, untangling localized code, all of that. But an organization with trust, they spend almost all their energy building forward.
Which sounds like absolute paradise.
Yeah.
Less arguing, more building, pure cognitive relief.
It really is.
But if the benefits are this massive, this undeniable, why doesn't every company achieve this? I mean, why are so many multi-million-dollar organizations stuck hoarding bottled water in the basement?
This raises an essential question about organizational structure. And Reidenhag does not pull his punches here.
No.
He states flatly that the obstacle holding companies back is almost never a lack of components. It's not a technical failure.
It's human failure.
Specifically, an incentive failure. The fatal flaw is that the organization remains structured to prioritize short-term speed over shared structure.
Wow, yeah.
Think about how performance is usually measured and rewarded. Product managers and development teams are incentivized, often with actual financial bonuses, to ship their specific features as fast as possible.
Right.
If utilizing the shared design system slows them down for even a single day because they have to request an update properly through the system team, what will they do?
They will bypass it.
Exactly. They will hard code a messy local solution just to hit their sprint deadline and get the win.
So local optimization rears its ugly head again, driven by the company's own reward structure.
Precisely. And this happens because, in most failing scenarios, the design system is treated as a side initiative.
Took a nice to have.
Yeah, it's a project run by a few passionate designers, but it lacks actual teeth. Wright and Haig argues that for a system to deliver real impact, it must have a mandate from leadership.
Let's explore that mechanism, though. What does a mandate actually look like in practice?
Good question.
Because it can't just be an executive sending out an email saying, please use the system, guys.
No, a real mandate changes the power dynamics. It means the design system team isn't viewed as an IT support desk. They are a core product team with a seat at the table. If a product squad wants to launch a massive custom UI that ignores the foundation, the system team has the authority to step in and say, no, you need to use the standard layout.
For what?
Or, if the standard layout truly fails your user, we will pause and build a new standard together. It has the power to influence the product roadmap and technical decisions.
Right?
It can't just be a library you visit when it's convenient. It has to become the literal, unavoidable way the product is built.
Okay, so if management is finally treating this like true infrastructure, I assume that changes how they measure success.
It has to.
Because usually, if executives want to know if their investment is paying off, they just look at volume, right? They pull up a dashboard and say, great, our new button was downloaded 10,000 times today. Adoption is up. We're succeeding.
And that is exactly the trap most executives fall into. And Wright and Haig offers what I consider the most powerful takeaway of the entire article here.
How's that?
He says you do absolutely not measure a system by the number of components it contains or how often they are downloaded. You measure it by how rarely those components need to be discussed.
Wait, how rarely they need to be discussed? That completely flips the script.
It entirely changes the perspective. The ultimate metric of success isn't volume, it's operational silence.
Operational silence. Wow.
When the foundational arguments stop, the system is working. You know you've reached maturity when the company's velocity increases, but the pace of work, the actual day-to-day stress, the hustle, the burnout of the teams, doesn't increase with it.
That's the dream right there.
Exactly. The quality of the product stabilizes without management having to add annoying new layers of bureaucracy or quality control. You can implement sweeping changes across the entire product suite without destabilizing the organization.
Because everyone is pulling from the exact same trusted, intentional infrastructure.
Exactly. The impact doesn't come from the library itself. The magic happens the moment the organization collectively accepts that certain decisions should be shared.
Right.
And they consistently allow the system to carry the weight of those decisions over time.
Well, this has been an incredibly eye-opening journey. Just to quickly summarize what we've unpacked today for you listening.
Yeah.
We learned that finishing a component library is really just the starting line. True organizational impact requires escaping the trap of local optimization, where teams just use new tools to do their old bad habits.
Exactly.
We have to move foundational decisions out of local silos and standardize them at the platform level. When we do that, we grant our teams massive cognitive relief, turning organic chaos into intentional change.
Beautifully said.
And finally, none of this works unless the system is given a real mandate by leadership, so teams can stop hoarding their own solutions out of fear and start building with total trust in the shared infrastructure.
It's really about shifting the focus from how the interface should look to how the product actually creates value.
Exactly.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on everything we've discussed today.
I hear it.
We've talked about this entirely in the context of software and design, but the psychology applies everywhere. If true efficiency and creativity are unlocked by entirely removing foundational decisions from our daily debates, take a hard look at your own daily routine or your team's workflows.
Right.
What is the spacing and accessibility of your day? What are those minor repetitive decisions you or your team are constantly debating over and over that you need to standardize once and for all?
That's a great question.
Because until you build a system to handle those, you will never have the brain space to focus on creating real value.
Find your foundational distractions and automate them out of your life. Until next time, put away the lucky hammer and trust the system.